Before we begin, I need you to do something right now. And I mean right now. Hit that like button in the next 30 seconds. Seriously, because what you're about to hear, what actually happened to 15-year-old Maya Reyes in Vancouver, British Columbia, is going to make you question every photograph you've ever taken. Subscribe before the first photo develops, because you're going to want to see where this goes. Comment your theory right now. Is it a curse, a time loop, or something worse? And for the love of everything holy, turn on notifications, because this story has a sequel that nobody saw coming. Finally, and I cannot stress this enough, watch until the very end. The last 2 minutes contain evidence that was only released 3 weeks ago. You have been warned. Deep breath. Camera shutter click in the distance. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was Maya's therapist for 6 months before she disappeared. Everything I'm about to tell you comes from 73 hours of recorded sessions, police evidence logs, and one Polaroid photograph that should not exist. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police still have the camera in evidence lockup. They won't destroy it. They can't destroy it, because every 6 months, it produces one more photo. And it's always accurate. Let's go back to where it started. March 14th, 2023, a Tuesday. Unremarkable Vancouver weather, that specific brand of Pacific Northwest gray that makes 3 p.m. feel like twilight. Maya Reyes, half Filipino, half Canadian, straight-A student at Lord Byng Secondary School, was helping her mom clean out her grandfather's attic. Her lolo, that's Tagalog for grandfather, had passed away 2 weeks earlier. Stroke. Quick. Painless. The kind of death everyone hopes for. Cardboard box scraping across wood floor. Maya told me she wasn't particularly close to her lolo. He'd immigrated from Manila in 1972, worked as a photographer for the Vancouver Sun, retired in 1998, and spent his final decades puttering around his Kitsilano bungalow, developing film in a basement darkroom that smelled like vinegar and secrets. Her mom, Clarice, had always been weird about the darkroom. "Don't go down there," she'd say. Not as a rule, as a plea. But Lolo was gone now, and the house needed to be cleared for sale. Vancouver real estate waits for no one's grief. Maya found the camera in a wooden box marked Lumang Kagamitan, old equipment, wrapped in cloth that might have been white in 1975 but had aged to the color of old teeth. The Polaroid SX-70. You know the one. Iconic folding design, leather case, the kind of camera that shows up in Stranger Things and makes Gen Z think analog is edgy. Cloth unwrapping, slow and deliberate. Underneath was a notebook, moleskin, water-damaged, her lolo's handwriting, shaky even decades ago. Huwag gamitin, do not use. Maniwala sa akin, believe me. Maya laughed. I mean, of course she did. She's 15. Warnings from dead grandparents are basically invitations at that age. She pocketed the camera, left the notebook. Mistake number 1. Clarice was downstairs arguing with an estate appraiser about crown molding. Maya slipped the camera into her backpack like contraband. That night, and this is where it gets specific, so pay attention, Maya couldn't sleep. Not unusual. She'd been having what she called the standing dreams since she was 12. You know sleep paralysis? That thing where you wake up but your body's still locked in REM sleep and there's a pressure on your chest, and sometimes you see figures in the corner of your room. Breathing, shallow and restricted. Maya's version was always the same. She'd wake up to find herself standing at the foot of her own bed, looking down at herself sleeping, watching herself breathe. And she could never see her own face in these dreams. It was always turned away, buried in the pillow. But she knew with absolute certainty that the thing in the bed wasn't her anymore, that something had switched places while she was standing there, paralyzed, watching. Her therapist before me had called it dissociative episodes brought on by academic stress. I call it foreshadowing. Camera shutter. Mechanical. Final. 11:47 p.m. Maya's lying in bed scrolling TikTok because insomnia and social media are a marriage made in hell when she remembers the camera. She gets up, digs it out of her backpack, examines it in her desk's lamp's light. There's a cartridge of film already loaded. Impossible. Polaroid film expires, degrades, becomes unusable. This cartridge is dated 1979, 44 years old. Should be toast. She points it at her desk. Clicks. Mechanical whir, chemical smell. The photo slides out, but instead of developing immediately like modern Instax, it's slow, analog. She watches the chemistry bloom across the white square like a Rorschach test assembling itself into reality. Takes about 90 seconds. When the image finally clarifies, Maya's stomach drops. It's her desk. Same angle, same lamp, but the clock in the photograph reads 11:48 p.m. Her current clock reads 11:57 p.m. Heartbeat. Single. Heavy. She stares at the photo, looks at the clock, back to the photo. The time in the photograph is 1 minute ahead. Could be a weird chemical delay, she thinks, Polaroid clocks running fast, except 11:48 arrives. And her lamp flickers exactly like it does in the photo. Same pattern, 3 short pulses, 1 long. She'd never noticed her lamp doing that before, but there it is, perfectly synchronized with a photograph that developed 90 seconds earlier, showing something that hadn't happened yet. Interactive pause. What would you do right now? Take another photo to test it, or put the camera away and pretend it never happened? Maya, and God love her scientific brain, takes another photo, this time of her desk door, closed, locked. She's paranoid about locked doors ever since her cousin told her about the Mangkukulam when she was 8, Filipino witches who send curses through open doorways. Her mom laughed it off. We're Catholic, anak. We don't believe in that stuff. But Catholicism and superstition aren't mutually exclusive in Filipino households. You go to Mass on Sunday and still throw salt over your shoulder. You take communion and still avoid whistling at night. Photo developing. Slow chemical burn. The second photo develops. Her desk door, but in the photo it's open, just slightly, maybe 6 inches, and the timestamp she'd set her phone next to the door to check reads 12:17 a.m. Current time 11:52 p.m. 25 minutes in the future. Maya watches her door for 25 minutes straight, doesn't blink, doesn't move, barely breathes. She records it on her phone, continuous video, no cuts, time-stamped. Clock ticking, amplified. 12:16 a.m., nothing. 12:17 a.m. Her doorknob turns, mechanism clicking, brass on brass. The door swings open, 6 inches, exactly as shown in the photograph. Nobody's there. She's alone in the house. Mom's working night shift at Vancouver General Hospital, ER nurse, rotating schedule. Maya's breathing sounds like sandpaper. She gets up, walks to the door, looks into the hallway. Empty. She closes the door, locks it, triple checks, sits back down on her bed and stares at the camera like it's a live grenade. Silence. Too long. Uncomfortable. Here's what she should have done. Thrown the camera away, smashed it, burned it in a barrel in the backyard like her Lolo's notebook probably warned against. But humans are pattern recognition machines, and Maya's brain was already asking the question that damns everyone in these stories. What else can it show me? The next morning, Wednesday, March 15th, Maya woke up to her mom screaming. Not a horror movie scream, worse. The kind of scream that's 90% grief and 10% confusion. Maya ran downstairs in her pajamas to find Clarice in the backyard, kneeling in the wet grass, holding their dog. Pansett, 8-year-old golden retriever, sweetest thing on 4 legs, named after Filipino noodles because when they had adopted him as a puppy, he'd tangled himself in Christmas lights. Shallow breathing, crying. Pansett was dead. No visible injuries, no blood. Vet's preliminary assessment, catastrophic heart failure. Sometimes it just happens, Dr. Patel said. He didn't suffer. But Maya knew, because at 2:37 a.m. that morning, she checked her phone records later. She'd woken up thirsty, padded downstairs for water, and seen the camera on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. And in a moment of 2 a.m. invincibility, that reckless clarity that comes from sleep deprivation, she'd taken one more photo. Aimed it at the backyard through the kitchen window. Photo developing, slower this time. The image showed morning light, wet grass, her mom kneeling, holding a golden shape. Maya had squinted at it, shrugged, and gone back to bed. Figured it was Clarice gardening. The dog was a blob of gold in the photo, could have been alive, could have been sleeping. But now, standing in the kitchen at 7:23 a.m., watching her mom sob into Pansett's fur, Maya pulled out that photo from her nightstand drawer where she'd stashed it. The timestamp, 7:15 a.m., March 15th. The photo had developed at 2:37 a.m., 4 hours and 38 minutes before it happened. Maya told me she vomited in the kitchen sink. Clarice thought it was grief. It wasn't. It was understanding. The camera didn't show random futures. It showed the future, specific, inevitable, accurate to the minute. She'd photographed her dog's death and hadn't realized it until it was too late to say goodbye. Silence. Let it sit. School that day was a blur. Maya moved through classes like a ghost. Her best friend, Jordan, white kid, skateboard obsession, good heart, asked if she was okay. She nodded, lied. Just tired. At lunch, she sat in the library and Googled variations of camera that predicts the future, photos that show tomorrow, cursed Polaroid. Nothing useful. Lots of creepypasta, time travel theories, a Reddit thread about a guy in New Mexico who claimed his Kodak showed lottery numbers, debunked, but nothing about this. Nothing about a Polaroid SX-70 with film from 1979 that violated causality. She found one thread on a Filipino folklore forum, San Telmo and Other Lights, mentioned Larawan den Kapalaran, photographs of fate. Supposedly, pre-colonial Filipino shamans used polished obsidian mirrors to see death omens. Spanish colonizers destroyed most of them, but the concept survived, morphed. Some said it transferred to cameras during the American occupation, urban legend stuff. Keyboard typing, frantic. One user, handle Manila Maria 1952, had posted, "My grandfather had one, Spanish-Filipino War era, glass plate camera, showed him the exact spot he'd die. He avoided that place for 60 years, died there anyway. Car accident. You can't avoid what's already happened in the future. Throw it away." The post was from 2009. Maya tried to message the user, account inactive. That night, Maya placed the camera in her closet, buried it under winter coats, told herself she'd never touch it again. Closet door closing, soft, final. She lasted 6 hours. Because here's the thing about seeing the future. Even once, even accidentally, it ruins the present. Every moment becomes a question mark. Every decision splits into branches. What if I do this? What if I don't? What happens in the next photo? The uncertainty is a brain poison. At 2:34 a.m., Maya retrieved the camera. She'd been thinking about it all evening. If the camera shows exactly 24 hours ahead, no wait, the dog photo was 4.5 hours, the door photo was 25 minutes, so it's not fixed. It's variable, random, or intentional. Pages flipping, notebook. She grabbed her Lolo's notebook from the attic, the one she'd left behind. Clarice was asleep, easy to sneak up there. The notebook was water damaged, whole sections illegible, but she found entries. June 3rd, 1979. Took photo of newsstand, showed headline from June 5th, 2 days ahead. Why 2 days? Tested again. Next photo only 6 hours ahead. No pattern, no control. August 12th, 1979. Clarice's birthday photo. Showed her blowing out candles, but she was alone. I was standing right next to her when I took it. Where did I go in the photo? Took it at 3 p.m. Photo showed 3 p.m. same day, but empty space where I stood. Page turning, frantic. September 1979. Stop. Destroyed 12 photos. Can't destroy camera. Tried hammer. Blowtorch. Nothing works. Metal won't dent. Lens won't crack. Threw in the ocean. Washed up on the beach next to my car. This thing chooses to exist. October 1979. Final entry. Took photo of myself in the mirror. It showed my corpse. Funeral. Clarice crying. Date on funeral program. February 14th, 2023. I will die on Valentine's Day, 44 years from now. I'm 15 years old in this photo. I have to live 44 years knowing exactly when I die. Maya checked her phone, Googled her grandfather's obituary. Computer mouse clicking. Ernesto Reyes, 88, passed peacefully on February 14th, 2023, surrounded by family. The photo was correct, to the day. 44 years in advance. Breathing, ragged. Maya closed the notebook, looked at the camera, and made the decision that would unravel everything. If I can see bad things coming, maybe I can stop them. Mistake number 2. Thursday, March 16th. Maya went to school with a plan. She'd test the camera's range, take a photo during lunch, see what it showed, and try to change it. Prove that the future wasn't fixed. Prove her Lolo wrong. School hallway ambient noise. Lockers, distant voices. At 12:14 p.m., in the second-floor girls' bathroom, empty, good acoustics for secrets, she aimed the camera at the mirror, took a photo of her own reflection. The photo developed. Chemical smell intensifying. It showed her, same bathroom, but her reflection was screaming, mouth open, eyes wide. Timestamp, 3:47 p.m. Same day, 3.5 hours away. Maya stared at the image. Her photographed self looked terrified, not sad, not surprised. Primal fear, the kind of expression you can't fake. She checked the background details obsessively. Same mirror, same bathroom stalls, same flickering fluorescent light in the upper right. Maintenance had been meaning to fix it for weeks. Bell ringing, distant. She had 3.5 hours to figure out what would make her scream like that and avoid it. Interactive pause. If you saw yourself screaming in a future photo, would you try to prevent it or just not go to that location? Drop your strategy in the comments. Maya's strategy: don't go to the second-floor bathroom at 3:47 p.m. Simple. Stay in the library during last period. Public space. Witnesses. Safety. Clock ticking. Accelerated. 3:46 p.m. Maya sat in the library surrounded by students studying for midterms. Jordan was at the next table, earbuds in, nodding to whatever pop punk was rotting his brain. She felt safe, relieved. The photo was wrong. She'd changed it. The future was... Her phone buzzed. Text from her mom. Come to VGH emergency, now. Don't panic, it's about Lola Rosario. Phone vibrating, insistent. Lola Rosario, her grandmother, Lolo's widow, still alive, living in a care facility in Surrey. Advanced dementia, barely recognized anyone anymore, but stable. Why would she be at Vancouver General Hospital emergency? Maya grabbed her bag, ran, didn't think, just moved. She sprinted through hallways, downstairs, out the front entrance toward the bus stop, and realized, halfway down the stairs, that she needed to pee. Footsteps, slowing. 3:46 and 53 seconds p.m. She was near the second-floor bathroom. She hesitated, looked at her phone, mom's text glowing, hospital emergency, grandmother, urgency. But also that photo, her screaming. In 7 seconds, it would be 3:47 p.m., and if she walked into that bathroom... Door creaking open slow. She walked in. Because of course she did. Because when reality throws you a crisis, theoretical futures take a back seat. She rushed to a stall, didn't even look at the mirror, just fluorescent light, flickering, erratic. The light above her went out, not flickered, out. The bathroom plunged into darkness except for the gray daylight leaking under the door. Maya froze mid-reach for the lock. That wasn't normal. The backup lights should have kicked in. Emergency protocol. This was a public school in Canada, not some horror movie's abandoned... Breathing. Not hers. Someone else was in the bathroom. She could hear them breathing, slow, deliberate, from the stall next to hers. But she'd checked when she came in. All stalls empty. She'd seen them empty. Stall door creaking, adjacent, opening inward. Maya's hands shook. She wanted to scream, but her throat had closed, wanted to run, but her legs were concrete. She stared at the gap under the stall divider, that 6-inch space between floor and partition. A shadow moved in the next stall. Footsteps, wet, bare feet on tile. Then a voice, female, old, Filipino accent thick as mud. Anak, bakit mo ko iniwan? Child, why did you leave me? It was Lola Rosario's voice. Scratching, fingernails on metal. Maya's grandmother, who was supposedly in a hospital emergency room across the city, was in the stall next to her, scratching at the divider, and her voice sounded wrong, layered, like two voices speaking in unison, one living and one not. Nasaan ang kamera? Ibigay mo sa akin. "Where is the camera? Give it to me." Maya screamed, full-throated, echoing. She screamed exactly like in the photograph, grabbed her bag, slammed out of the stall, and saw the mirror. In the mirror, for just a fragment of a second, she saw herself still standing in the stall, still frozen, while her in the real world was running. Two versions, split. She didn't stop to process it. She ran out of the bathroom, down the hall, out of the school. Didn't stop running until she was on the bus, gasping, crying, while concerned passengers pretended not to notice. Bus engine, moving, safety. She called her mom. "Maya? Honey, where are you? You sound... Did you text me? About Lola, what happened?" Silence on the line. "Maya? I didn't text you. I'm at work. Lola's fine. I called the facility an hour ago to check. What are you talking about?" Maya checked her messages. The text was gone. Not deleted, gone, like it never existed. No record in her history. Phone hitting floor, plastic cracking. She checked the camera in her bag, still there. The photograph of herself screaming, she pulled it out with shaking hands. The timestamp now read 3:47 p.m., but the date had changed. It now said March 16th, 2024. 1 year in the future. The photo she'd taken at 12:14 p.m. today was now showing her screaming a year from now. That made no sense. Unless the camera didn't just photograph the future, it created futures, plural, branching. And by trying to avoid one future, she split into a different timeline where the scream happened later, differently, worse. Silence. Dread settling. Maya got off the bus 3 stops early and walked the rest of the way home. It was raining. That Vancouver drizzled. It soaks you before you realize you're wet. She didn't care. She needed to think, needed to understand. If the camera showed futures that could change, but still eventually happened, if avoiding one future just created another, if her Lolo saw his own death 44 years early and still died exactly when predicted, then what was the point of seeing anything at all? Keys jangling, door unlocking. Home. Empty. Clarice's shift didn't end until 11 p.m. Maya went straight to her room, locked the door, put a chair against it for good measure because doorknobs turned themselves now apparently, and laid the camera on her desk next to the photograph. She studied the image of herself screaming, looked for clues, background details. What would make her scream like that a year from now? And then she noticed something in the mirror behind her photographed self. Magnifying glass over photo, paper crinkling. A figure, blurred, barely visible, standing in the bathroom stall behind her. Tall, impossibly tall, proportions wrong, head tilted at an angle that necks don't tilt. She grabbed her phone, used the zoom function to enlarge the photo. The figure was wearing her Lolo's face. Not like a mask, like his face had been pulled over something else, stretched and distorted, eyes too far apart, mouth open too wide. Phone dropping, heartbeat spiking. Maya vomited into her trash can. When she looked up, wiping her mouth, she saw the camera had moved. She'd left it on the left side of her desk. It was now on the right side, pointed at her bed. Camera shutter, automatic, no hand on the trigger. A photo ejected itself. The photo the camera took of itself, without anyone touching it, developed over 90 agonizing seconds while Maya sat paralyzed at her desk, watching chemistry become prophecy. Chemical reactions, slow burn, inevitable. When the image clarified, she saw her bedroom. Same angle as if the camera were sitting exactly where it was now, but the timestamp read 12:17 a.m., 4 hours from now. And in the photo, her bedroom door was open. Again. Not 6 inches this time, wide open. And in the doorway, nothing, just darkness. The hallway light was off in the photo, which was wrong because Clarice kept it on 24/7. Electricity's cheaper than broken necks, Anak. But the darkness in the doorway looked textured, three-dimensional, like it had weight. Maya stared at the photo until her eyes watered. Okay, new plan. She couldn't avoid the future, the bathroom proved that, but maybe she could prepare for it. If the door would be open at 12:17 a.m., she'd be ready. Camera in hand, lights on. Mom home, she'd be back by 11:15 p.m. Safety in numbers. Clock ticking. Normal pace. Almost comforting. She spent the next 4 hours doing homework. Or trying to. Mostly she watched the door, watched the clock, watched the photo. The timestamp didn't change. Still 12:17 a.m. Still 4 hours away. Then 3 hours. Then 2. Clarice came home at 11:23 p.m., smelling like hospital disinfectant and exhaustion. "You okay, baby? You look pale." "Just tired." "You're always tired. I'm making champorado. You want some?" Chocolate rice porridge. Comfort food. Filipino mothers solve everything with carbs. Pot simmering, spoon stirring. Maya sat at the kitchen table while her mom cooked, the camera hidden in her hoodie pocket. She thought about telling her, thought about showing her the photos, but what would she say? "Hey Mom, Lolo's camera photographs the future and also maybe created a demon that wears his Lolo's face." Clarice would call Dr. Patel, or worse, Father Emmanuel from Holy Rosary Cathedral. Either way, they'd take the camera, and some dark, curious part of Maya didn't want them to. Because, and she hated admitting this, she wanted to know what the camera would show next. Interactive pause. Would you tell your parent about a cursed camera or keep it secret? Be honest. Comment below. 11:47 p.m. Maya went back to her room. Clarice followed 20 minutes later with champorado in a bowl decorated with faded Hello Kitty stickers from Maya's childhood, kept for sentimentality. "Eat, sleep. Stop worrying about Pancit. He had a good life." "I know, Mom." Clarice kissed her forehead. "Lock your door. I know you get nervous when I work nights." Door closing. Lock clicking. Maya waited until she heard her mom's bedroom door close, then checked the time. 12:09 a.m. 8 minutes. She positioned herself on her bed, facing the door, camera in hand, phone recording video, just in case. Every light in the room blazing. She'd even dragged her desk lamp over for extra illumination. If something was coming through that door, she'd see it clearly. Breathing. Controlled. Measured. 12:15 a.m. 12:16 a.m. Her doorknob turned. Brass mechanism. Slow rotation. But Maya had locked it. Triple-checked. The knob turned anyway, lock disengaging with a soft click that shouldn't happen from the outside unless someone had a key, and she had the only key, and the door swung open. Hinges creaking, long, drawn out. 12:17 a.m. Nobody there. Just her hallway. Except the light was off, exactly like in the photo, even though she'd checked it before locking herself in, and it was definitely on. The darkness in the doorway looked exactly like it did in the photograph. Textured, heavy, almost solid. Maya raised her phone, recording, flashlight on. The beam cut through the doorway into the hall, and something moved in the darkness. Fabric rustling, wet. Not toward her, parallel, like something walking past her doorway. Something tall. She caught a glimpse of a shape, humanoid but wrong, proportions stretched, moving with a gait that had too many joints. It walked past her door and disappeared toward her mom's bedroom. Footsteps, bare feet, wet, deliberate. Maya's blood turned to ice. She grabbed the camera, aimed it at the hallway, took a photo. Shutter, mechanical, loud in the silence. The photo ejected. She watched it develop while listening to the footsteps stop outside her mom's bedroom door. Doorknob turning. Different door. Clarice's room. The photo developed. Timestamp 12:19 a.m. 2 minutes from now. The image showed her mom's bedroom, but the perspective was from inside the room, facing the door, like the camera would be sitting on Clarice's nightstand. And in the photo, Clarice is asleep in bed, but standing over her. The figure. Clear now, detailed. It wore her Lolo's face like a sagging mask, stretched over a frame that was 7 feet tall, arms too long, fingers that bent backward at the middle knuckle. The mouth hung open, jaw unhinged like a snake, and something dark dripped from it onto Clarice's sleeping form. Scream building, trapped in throat. Maya ran, out of her room, down the hallway, slammed her mom's door open, door crashing, hinges screaming, lights on, Clarice bolting upright, terrified. "Maya, what?" "Don't go back to sleep. Stay awake. Something's—" Windows rattling, all of them, simultaneously. Every window in the house rattled in their frames like something was trying to get in or out. The sound was deafening, glass chattering against wood, and then silence, sudden, complete. Clarice stared at Maya. "Anak, what's happening?" Maya looked at the clock, 12:19 a.m. She looked at the photo still clutched in her hand. The image had changed. Photo rustling. Paper shouldn't move on its own. Now it showed an empty bedroom. No Clarice, no figure, just an empty bed, covers thrown back, and the bedroom door wide open, and written on the wall above the bed in something dark and wet. "Lumabas Nasha." She already left. "Mom," Maya whispered, "where's Lola Rosario right now?" Clarice blinked, confused by the non sequitur. The care facility? Why?" "Call them right now." Phone dialing, ringing, too many rings. A nurse answered, voice professionally calm. "This is Surrey's Senior Care. How can I help?" "This is Clarice Reyes. I need to check on my mother-in-law, Rosario Reyes, room 3. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but Mrs. Reyes passed away approximately 40 minutes ago. We tried to call you, but—" Phone hitting the floor, plastic shattering. Clarice's face went white. Maya's hands shook. Lola Rosario had died at 11:40 p.m., 20 minutes before Maya heard her voice in the school bathroom. The thing in the bathroom hadn't been her grandmother. It had been something wearing her grandmother, the same way it was wearing her Lolo. Silence, horror settling like dust. "Maya," Clarice whispered, tears starting, "how did you know?" Maya looked at the camera in her hands, then at her mom, then made a decision that would have saved them both if she'd made it 6 hours earlier. "We need to destroy this thing."
They tried everything. Hammer against metal. Ringing. Futile. Clarice swung a claw hammer at the camera's lens with the full force of a woman who just lost her mother-in-law and discovered her dead father-in-law's camera was haunted. The hammer bounced off like striking granite. Not a scratch. Not a crack. The lens didn't even smudge. Blowtorch igniting. Gas hissing. They tried fire. Clarice had a blowtorch in the garage from a failed creme brulee phase. She held the blue flame against the camera's leather casing for 90 seconds straight while Maya timed it. The leather didn't char, didn't even warm. When Clarice touched it afterward, the camera was cold. Ocean waves, night, driving. At 2:47 a.m. they drove to Kitsilano Beach, the same beach where Lolo had apparently thrown the camera in 1979. Clarice hurled it as far into the Pacific as her ER nurse arms could manage. They watched it arc through the Vancouver night and disappear into black water. Splash. Distant. Final. They sat on the beach for an hour, shivering, not talking. Clarice cried quietly. Maya held her, watched the waves, felt the absence of the camera like a phantom limb. At 4:12 a.m. they walked back to the car. Footsteps on sand, slow, defeated. The camera was sitting on the hood, dry, not a drop of seawater, lens pristine, a fresh photo already developing in the slot. Clarice screaming, raw, broken. Clarice grabbed the photo with shaking hands. Maya leaned over to look. The image showed their kitchen. Timestamp 7:37 a.m., 3 hours from now. And sitting at the kitchen table were 2 figures, Clarice and Maya. But their faces were blank, smooth, no features, like someone had erased their eyes, noses, mouths with a thumb smudge. And standing behind them, hands on their shoulders. 2 more figures, wearing Clarice and Maya's faces. Perfect, smiling, wrong. "It's showing us," Maya whispered. "Being replaced." Clarice's voice came out strangled. "By what?" Maya picked up the camera. It felt heavier now, warmer, almost alive. She could swear she felt a pulse through the metal. I don't think it's just showing the future anymore. I think it's making a space for something. Every photo is a doorway. Camera vibrating, subtle, organic. She thought about her Lolo's notebook. Empty space where I stood. Photos where he disappeared. Photos that showed futures where he didn't exist. And then, 44 years later, he died exactly when predicted. What if the camera had been slowly removing him from reality, photo by photo, future by future, until the version of him that could exist in the present ran out? Breathing, hyperventilating, Clarice. "We need to go to the church," Clarice said suddenly. "Father Emmanuel, he does exorcisms. He can bless it, destroy it, something." "Mom, Lolo tried everything. I don't care what he tried." Clarice grabbed the camera from Maya's hands. "I'm not letting this thing take my daughter." Car engine starting, aggressive. They drove to Holy Rosary Cathedral as dawn broke over Vancouver. The city looked normal. Joggers, early buses, Tim Hortons opening. Reality chugging along oblivious to the apocalypse unfolding in one Kitsilano household. Church doors, heavy, old wood. Father Emmanuel, 70-something Filipino, kind eyes, met them in the sanctuary. Clarice explained in rapid Tagalog while Maya stood clutching the camera, watching it breathe in her hands. The priest listened, nodded, didn't look skeptical. That was the thing about Filipino Catholic clergy. They'd seen some shit. "Let me see it," he said. Maya handed it over. Camera changing hands. Weight transfer. Father Emmanuel examined it, turned it over, studied the lens. Then, very carefully, very calmly, set it on the altar and stepped back. "This isn't a demon," he said quietly. "Then what is it?" Clarice demanded. "It's a witness, something that exists outside time, probably pre-colonial. Our ancestors knew about these, bantay ng oras, guardians of hours. They observe, record, but if you interact with them," he gestured at the camera, "they interact back." Candle flames flickering, all of them, no wind. "Can you destroy it?" Maya asked. "No, but I can try to close the door you've opened." He began the ritual. Holy water, Latin prayers, Vatican approved, Tagalog incantations, decidedly not approved but more effective. Maya and Clarice knelt in the pews watching. The camera sat on the altar like an accusation. Chanting, layered, building. Father Emmanuel's voice rose. The candles flickered more violently, and then, camera shutter, automatic. A photo ejected. The priest stopped mid-prayer. They all stared. The photo developed, showed the inside of the church, but the timestamp read 1886. The church hadn't been built until 1900. Paper curling, edges browning, aging rapidly. The image showed the land before the church, trees, and standing where the altar now stood, a woman, Filipino, traditional dress, holding something that looked like a polished stone disc, a mirror. Realization hitting, audible gasp. "The camera didn't create the curse," Father Emmanuel whispered. "It's a vessel. Someone bound the bantay ng oras to it during colonization, trapped it in European technology. It's been trying to get out for 140 years. "How?" Maya asked. "By creating enough doorways, enough futures that reality thins. And when it's thin enough," he looked at Maya, "it steps through." Church doors slamming open, all of them, no one there. Wind rushed through the sanctuary, not natural wind, cold, smelling like old photographs and darkroom chemicals. The candles extinguished simultaneously. Darkness, complete, breathing echoing. In the darkness, Maya heard it. Wet footsteps, bare feet, slow, approaching from multiple directions. Something was in the church with them. Multiple somethings. Father Emmanuel shouted, "Run!" And they ran. Clarice grabbed Maya's hand, Father Emmanuel grabbed the camera, and they sprinted toward the exit while the wet footsteps multiplied behind them, dozens of them, hundreds of them, like an army of the photographed dead chasing them through the dark. Running, panting, door handle rattling. They burst out into morning sunlight and didn't stop running until they reached the car. Father Emmanuel threw the camera into the back seat like it was burning him. "I can't help you. This is beyond. You need to find the woman in that photo, the original binding. Only she can." Car door slamming, engine roaring. Clarice drove, didn't ask where, just drove. Maya pulled out her phone with shaking hands and photographed the 1886 image that the camera had produced, zoomed in on the woman's face, reverse image searched it. Phone loading, buffering, agonizing. One result. An archived article from the Vancouver Historical Society, 1889, about a Filipino woman named Batoon Alvarez who'd worked as a domestic servant for a British colonial photographer. She'd accused him of stealing indigenous artifacts, including sacred mirrors used for ancestor communication. The photographer claimed she was lying. She disappeared 3 weeks later, never found. The article included one photograph, the photographer's studio, and on his desk, a Polaroid SX-70 camera that wouldn't be invented for another 82 years. Silence, horror compounding. "It's not a camera," Maya whispered. "It's a prison." And she was holding the key.
The original binding. Find Batoon Alvarez. Easy, right? Except she'd been missing since 1889, presumably dead, and they were driving aimlessly through Vancouver at 8:47 a.m. while something wearing their faces was scheduled to appear in their kitchen in, Maya checked the photo, -46 minutes. They'd missed the timestamp. The future had already happened. Cars screeching to a halt, parking lot, wreck beach. "We can't go home," Clarice said, voice hollow. "If those things are there." "They are there," Maya interrupted. "The photo showed." "Then we leave. Right now. We drive to Seattle. We cross the border. Mom." Maya held up the camera. "It found Lolo at the bottom of the ocean. It found us at the church. It's not about location. It's about time. We're connected to it now." Seagulls. Distant. Normal. Wrong. Clarice pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. "What do we do?" Maya thought. Lolo's notebook. The woman in 1886. The Bantay ng Oras. Guardians of hours. Trapped in the camera. Using photographs as doorways. Each future photograph a crack in reality. And after enough cracks, "It's not trying to show us the future," Maya said slowly. "It's trying to build into the future. One photograph at a time, creating spaces where it can exist, and when there are enough spaces, it steps through," Clarice finished, "like Father Emmanuel said." "Right, so we need to stop it from creating more doorways." "How?" Camera in hands, warm, pulsing. Maya looked at it, really looked at it, the leather casing, the pristine lens, the impossible weight, and she remembered something from her Lolo's notebook. "Took photo of myself in the mirror. It showed my corpse." A photograph of a photograph, recursion, the camera photographing its own output. "What if," Maya said slowly, "we make it photograph its own doorway?" Clarice stared. "What would that do?" "I don't know, but if it's creating doorways to the future and we make it photograph its own doorway, maybe it collapses? Maybe it eats itself?" Silence. Waves crashing. Thinking. "Or maybe," Clarice whispered, "it creates an infinite loop and destroys reality." "Yeah, also possible." Interactive pause. Would you risk collapsing reality to stop a supernatural threat or just run forever? Comment your choice. They sat in the car for 3 minutes, Maya counted, weighing apocalypse against continued haunting. Finally, Clarice reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. "Your Lolo lived with this for 44 years. I won't let you do the same." Car door opening. Decision made. They walked down to the beach. Early morning. Deserted. Perfect. Maya set the camera on a piece of driftwood, pointed at the ocean. Then she laid out every photo it had ever produced, the desk lamp, the dog, the bathroom door, the bedroom door, all of them, arranged them in a circle around the camera. A ritual, a trap, a prayer. Wind picking up, unnatural. She took a fresh photo of the camera itself, surrounded by its own prophecies. Shutter. Click. Final. The photo ejected. It developed slower than any before. The chemistry seemed to fight itself, colors bleeding wrong, shapes refusing to clarify. 2 minutes, 3, 4. When the image finally appeared, Maya's breath stopped. Gasping, choking on air. The photo showed nothing. Not blackness, not whiteness. Nothing. A void, an absence of existence. And at the edges of the void, barely visible, were faces, hundreds of them, thousands. Every person who'd ever been photographed by the camera, trapped in the space between moments, including her Lolo, including her Lola, including photo rustling, new image forming on top. The photo changed. Now it showed Maya and Clarice, but they were inside the void, faces pressed against an invisible barrier, mouths open in silent screams, and the timestamp read, now. Reality tearing, audible, like fabric ripping. The air around the camera split. Not metaphorically, the literal air cracked like glass, and through the crack Maya saw elsewhere. A space outside time, where the Bantai lived, where all the photographed futures existed simultaneously, and emerging from the crack, wet footsteps, dozens, hundreds. They came. Every version of every person the camera had ever photographed, all the futures, all the prophecies, made flesh. Her Lolo at 15 and 88 and every year between, her Lola young and old and dying, Pansit alive and dead, herself screaming in the bathroom, herself with no face, all of them walking out of the crack toward the present. Clarice screaming, Maya frozen. Run! Clarice grabbed Maya's hand and pulled, but Maya couldn't move because among the figures emerging from the crack, she saw Between Alvarez, the woman from 1889, still young, still wearing the clothes from the historical photograph, and she was looking directly at Maya. Eye contact, across time, understanding. Between raised her hand, pointed at the camera, mouthed one word, destroy. But Maya had tried. Everyone had tried. It couldn't be. Revelation, sudden, clear. Unless you destroyed it from inside the timeline. Camera in hands, new plan, insane plan. Maya grabbed the camera and aimed it at herself. One more photo. But this time, she didn't just press the shutter. She thought at it, projected intent, demanded, show me how to end this. Shutter. Click. Different, louder. The photo that emerged developed instantly. No 90-second wait. The image appeared like it had been waiting, stored, ready. It showed Maya's hands holding the camera inside a darkroom, Lolo's darkroom, at the exact moment a photograph develops. And in that moment, in the chemical bath where futures become fixed, she had to submerge the camera while it was developing a photograph of itself. Recursion, the snake eating its tail, the doorway consuming the doorway. Understanding, horror, certainty. Maya looked at Clarice. I need to get to Lolo's darkroom, now. The figures were 20 feet away, 10 feet, the crack in reality widening with each second. Soon it wouldn't just be the photographed, it would be the Bantai itself. Car, running, doors slamming. They drove like the apocalypse was chasing them. Because it was.
Lolo's house. Empty since his death. For sale sign in the yard. Maya had the key. Clarice had kept it for sentimental reasons. They burst through the front door at 9:23 a.m., ran straight to the basement stairs. Footsteps. Descending. Fast. The darkroom hadn't been touched since February 14th, the day Lolo died. Chemical trays still set up. Red safe light bulbs still functional, clothespins hanging empty on the line where ghosts used to dry. Chemicals. Acrid. Familiar.
Maya worked fast. Clarice watched the stairs, listening for wet footsteps. They were coming. They were always coming now. Maya prepared the developer bath exactly how Lolo's instruction sheet, taped to the wall, yellowed, specified. One more photo. She set the camera on the edge of the chemical tray, aimed it down at its own reflection in the developer fluid. A photograph of the camera seeing itself in the liquid where photographs became real. Hand hovering over shutter. If this doesn't work, Maya started. It'll work, Clarice said, believing it, needing it. Maya pressed the shutter. Click. Mechanical. Final. The photo ejected, and she immediately plunged the camera, photo still attached, into the developer bath. Liquid sloshing. Chemicals reacting. Wrong. The reaction was immediate and violent. The developer began to boil. The liquid turned from clear to black to something that wasn't a color at all, a shade that hurt to perceive. The camera shook in the tray, metal screaming, and the photo still emerging from the slot developed in reverse, colors bleeding backward, image unforming, future unhappening. Reality groaning, structure failing. Upstairs, they heard it, the front door slamming open. Wet footsteps, hundreds of them. The photographed dead climbing down the stairs, coming for the camera, coming for them. The developer tray cracked, glass shattering, liquid spreading. The chemical spread across the darkroom floor like mercury, reflecting not the ceiling, but somewhere else. Maya saw faces in the reflection, all the trapped futures, all the stolen moments, and they were screaming. Silent screaming, worse than sound. The camera sank deeper into the impossible liquid. The metal began to corrode, finally destroying. And with each centimeter it descended, the footsteps on the stairs grew quieter. The crack in reality upstairs began to seal. Breathing. Maya's. Ragged. But the photograph was still developing. The image showed the darkroom, from above, looking down at Maya and Clarice. And behind them, emerging from the shadow, wet footsteps. Behind them. Close. Maya spun. Betún Alvarez stood 3 feet away. Not threatening, not hostile, just there, existing in the moment between photograph and reality. She looked at Maya with eyes that had seen 134 years of imprisoned time, and she spoke. Voice. Layered. Multiple timelines. The Bantide doesn't die, it only sleeps. When the camera has gone, it will find another vessel, a phone, a mirror, something that captures and reflects. It always finds a way. Then what's the point? Maya demanded. Why destroy the camera if... Because, Betún said, you give the rest of us time. All the trapped, all the photographed. We can finally... She looked down at her hands. They were becoming transparent. Finish existing. The camera sank completely into the developer bath. Silence. Complete. Final. And every photographed future simultaneously collapsed. Rushing, wind, time rearranging. Maya felt it like dominoes falling backward through her memory. The bathroom that would happen in a year, erased. The bedroom door that opened itself, erased. Panchit's death. She blinked. Barking. Distant. Impossible. Upstairs, a dog barked. Clarice's head snapped up. That sounds like... They ran upstairs. Footsteps, ascending. Desperate hope. The living room was empty. The photographed dead, gone. The crack in reality, sealed. And sitting on the couch, tail wagging, very much alive. Panchit. Whimpering, happy, real. Oh my God, Clarice whispered. The photo of him dying, if that future was erased. The timelines had rearranged. The prophecy had uncreated itself. Panchit's heart failure, which had happened because Maya saw it happen, had never happened because she'd unmade the seeing. Causality breaking. Beautifully. Maya dropped to her knees and hugged the dog, sobbing. Clarice joined her. They stayed like that for 10 minutes, just breathing, existing, present. When Maya finally went back to the darkroom to check, the chemical tray was empty. No camera, no residue. Just faint scorch marks on the porcelain in the shape of a Polaroid SX-70. On the wall, Lolo's instruction sheet had new writing, fresh ink, his handwriting. Salamat, Apo. Rest now. Thank you, granddaughter.
Here's where it gets weird, because Maya Reyes' story doesn't end there. It shouldn't end there. The camera was destroyed, the curse was broken, the dog was alive, and everything seemed fine. Except 3 weeks ago, on January 10, 2026, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Evidence Lockup in Vancouver reported something they couldn't explain. A Polaroid SX-70 camera appeared on a shelf marked Reyes Case, Destroyed Evidence. Security footage showed no one entering the room. The camera simply appeared within 1 minute. They tried to destroy it again, and it still didn't work. Sitting in the photo slot was one fresh photograph, already developed. It showed a teenage Filipino girl holding a smartphone. The timestamp read March 14, 2027, 1 year from now. The girl was wearing Maya's jacket, but it wasn't Maya's face. Bituin was right. The Bantay Dantes Oras doesn't die. It only finds new vessels. If you made it this far, here's what you need to do right now. Like this video if you want me to investigate what happens on March 14, 2027. I have access to police files, therapy recordings, and a possible lead on who that girl really is. Subscribe and turn on notifications because part 2 is coming, and it makes this story look tame. One last thing. If you own a Polaroid camera from the 1970s, maybe don't use it. Maybe don't even look at it. Because the Bantay Dantes Oras is still out there, still watching, still waiting for someone curious enough to take one more photo. And that someone might be you.